raise of hands. We've been talking all day about cross-border payments. How many of you have actually done a cross-border payment? Okay, good. Okay. Second question. How many of you use WhatsApp on a regular basis? Show of hands. Okay, awesome. That is much higher than in the US. So great. So Felix basically combines those two. We are the first ever chatbot on WhatsApp to send remittances from the US to LATAM. And the way that we give our product this real WhatsApp feeling is by leveraging stablecoins. We are a company built by Latinos for Latinos. Our two founders, Manuel Godoy, Venezuelan, so am I Venezuelan, and Bernardo Garcia, Mexican, they basically met after having the journey of immigrants in the US during their MBA at Wharton, and they basically talked about having a business or founding a business to help Latinos throughout their immigration journey. And this is how Felix came to be. They started researching, doing customer discovery, and basically they found out that remittances is the first financial product that an immigrant looks for when they get to the US. So they find a job, number one. Number two, they want to send money back to their loved ones. And this is what we're mostly tackling. However, in the long term, we see ourselves as much more than that. We see ourselves as a companion of Hispanic immigrants in the US throughout their journey as immigrants. So we start with remittances, leveraging stablecoins, but we see ourselves as much more than that. We're not a crypto company. I know Guerra said that before about her company earlier, and we use stablecoins because they make sense. And it makes sense to start with remittances because it's a huge opportunity. Our market, we serve a market of 60 million Latino immigrants in the US. That's first, second, and third generation. And collectively, they send $150 billion to their families every year. And they do so using painful and expensive processes. So it's a huge opportunity, and it makes sense to start there. And because it's a huge opportunity, I also want you to understand the pain points and not just focus on the big number of the remittance space. So let's start with the senders in the US. They send around 15% of their income, which is a significant portion if you think about it like an expense. It's very close to what you'd spend on rent, so huge, huge piece. On the other side of the border, let's say in Mexico, this income represents around 50% of a household's income, so huge portion, even bigger. But on both sides, it's a significant piece of like their mind space and their budget. Let's talk now about the transaction, right? So what happens in the middle? For Hispanics, so the corridors from the US to the rest of Latin America, 70% of these transactions still occur in cash, which is not the case in Africa, it's not the case in Asia, it's very specific to Latin America. This, of course, the fact that it's still in cash takes time, right? So people have to actually go to a place, sometimes wait in line for hours, so that's also a cost. And then there's the financial cost. These services, the existing incumbent physical store services, tend to be much more expensive than the digital ones. The fact is that digital ones, the ones that already exist, and here we go, there are some digitals, they are the incumbents, and then there's us. The digital ones have usually expanded globally and have lost kind of the core focus of the corridors that they started serving. So for example, let's say our competitor Remitly, they started focusing on the Philippines, I think it was, and then they expanded globally. That is not what we're looking to do. We want to serve our core customer, which is very different from all other immigrants in the world. We've covered a lot of the pain points, so cost, time, et cetera, but I want to focus on our two key differentiators. So I've already mentioned both of them, but I just want to highlight them. The fact that we're on WhatsApp, we're a conversational product, we do not have an app, which is apparently surprising to a lot of people when I say it. And then the second is that we're fully focused on the Hispanic immigrants. So we're in Spanish, we speak slang. Yeah, two differentiators. Why do we think these two things are so important? Is because we think that they're going to truly digitize remittances for Latinos. And just a couple of numbers. So I already mentioned some of these stats, but basically 70 million Latinos, 70% of those remittances are sent in cash. There's this rhetoric that the reason why they're sent in cash is because people are unbanked. The truth is that in the US, Hispanic immigrants are mostly banked, like 75% banked. So the rhetoric is not matching, right? And we think, well, we've done a lot of research around this, and it's mostly based because of two issues: trust and habits. So trust is because they distrust a very complex financial system. So I don't know how many of you have had to deal with the US financial system, but it's pretty complicated, especially as an immigrant. You get to the US, you need to have a credit score for almost everything. And then there's also paying taxes, et cetera, et cetera. So people tend to distrust the big financial system that they don't understand. And then the second is habit. Most of these immigrants come from countries, Mexico, for example, is mostly unbanked. So around 50% of the population is still unbanked. And a lot of these immigrants comes from these realities where cash is still king. So habit, they come to the US, they still want to transact in cash. That's why we think these two things are key, because with our product being on WhatsApp, an app that they already have on their phone, 85% of Latinos use WhatsApp to communicate, to even do business, buy materials, et cetera, et cetera. We are building on an app they already have. They don't have to download anything. And we speak their language. We speak in Spanish, which also kind of leverages the trust piece. So we see WhatsApp, as I mentioned here, as the midpoint between that purely physical place where people go and speak in Spanish to a person in their face, and then the fully digital app that they don't have to leave their house, but because they don't have to download it, we're kind of like the middle point. And we trust that this is the way to go. So how do we do this on the back end? Because in order for our product to really feel like a WhatsApp conversation, it has to be fast. It can't take 2 days. Somebody earlier mentioned the week. It can't not work on the weekend. So it has to work every time they try. So yeah, we leverage both stablecoins and AI to make this as a human conversation as possible. So I'll do a little walkthrough of this flow. First, a beneficiary, a sender, so a person in the US, talks to our WhatsApp Felix chatbot. That chatbot basically handles the entire conversation, asks for information, then the payment is done through a debit card. We are working with Zero Hash to offer more payment options in the future. And we basically, that fiat payment is put on ramp and then moved across borders and off ramped, for example, through Bitso or other partners that are here. And ultimately, that's sent the last mile to the beneficiary's bank account. We are working with Zero Hash on two pieces of this flow. Basically, as I said, looking for additional payment methods and also as a money transmitter partner in the US. What have we achieved so far? And I'm just gonna mention a couple of things. We've, of course, as I mentioned, closed multiple partnerships with multiple companies, key players in the industry and region. A couple of them have talked and been here today. And then more in terms of numbers. In less than 2 years of operation, we've processed more than $300 million. We have added 120K payout locations across 3 countries, Mexico, Honduras, and Guatemala. And we've raised more than $20 million in capital. We actually just closed our Series A a couple of months ago, so very exciting times. And we've served more than 120 customers in this time. Most of them try us once and they stay. They love us and they let us know. Our NPS score is 85, as I'm showing here. Just to give you an order of magnitude, in the industry, NPS is around 40. So we're extremely proud of that number. And then last, just to finish and let you with a little taste of what's coming. So we plan to do more geographic expansion in the region. Again, Hispanic immigrants, so the Spanish-speaking LATAM is what we're focused on right now. We plan to add more payment methods, already mentioned that too. We plan to continue to grow our B2B2C business. I can talk about more of that if you're interested, but basically we have an API for companies in LATAM to be able to let their beneficiaries in the region request a remittance and use our infrastructure to make that cross-border. And lastly, we expect to increase in financial products to our core customer in the US. So that is all for today. I hope that you loved it, and thank you.